Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Cody.
And today we are joined by the amazing crew over at Colorado Punk Rock Army with Phil, Andy, and Lala. Welcome, everyone.
Hi. Oi.
So, this has been, like every other time we have a guest come on, this is one that we've been excited about because it's like fellow punk rockers, punk rock enthusiasts coming on this podcast to talk about punk rock with us today. So, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on. Yeah, and also today we're here to remind you to make sure to leave your water running when temperatures get below freezing.
Nah.
Usually we kind of throw out something more shit and giggles and like trying to start fires, but I figured we actually throw out an actual tip this time.
Why?
I don't know. Keep people on their toes.
Right.
We gotta keep them on their toes.
Hot water is the best way to clear ice from your windshield.
You can pee on your windshield to clear it. That's an actual thing.
Or you could just lick it off.
Why is Bill late? He's just like his windshield.
And then you see Bill afterward, like, see you tomorrow, bye! And he's just on the top of the hood of his car, just being a total tool. So, let's just jump right into it. Today we're going to be talking about not only the history and inspirations of punk rock and how it got started, we're also going to be talking about horror with punk rock and how horror and just punk rock music and punks in general kind of connect more than you would think. So, starting forward, let's talk about Colorado Punk Rock Army. What is Colorado Punk Rock Army and how did it get started?
Well, it was Phil and I that started it in the beginning. When we were in high school back in the 90s, there was this great show on Channel 12 called Teletoons, and it used to show a lot of local music videos, a lot of underground videos. It was the first place I ever heard bands like Marilyn Manson, Circle Jerks, Descendants for that matter.
No Effects.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when that show ended, it just kind of left a void in the scene. They always had a concert calendar. People weren't informed as much as where the shows were, what was going on. The scene just wasn't as cohesive as we saw it in the 90s, and we wanted to see that come back. And so we wanted to try and build that platform back up in a way that in the same kind of way that Teletoons had it in the 80s and 90s.
When we went to, one of the big reasons we started is I went to see a Celtic punk band called the Mahones. They played the Colorado Irish Fest.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
And there was me and another guy there standing by ourselves watching the band, and nobody else at the entire fest was watching them.
Oh, that's right.
And it hurt my feelings for them to fly from Ontario, Canada, out here to play for two people. And I got to thinking, and I'm looking on like the Irish Fest didn't do any promotion whatsoever. And I got on Facebook and I started telling people, and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know they were coming, but I'm busy. I'm in LA. I'm in New York. I can't come see them." Mm-hmm. And right there, I was like, "We got to do something. We got to do something to boost the more underground scene because, unfortunately, the likes of like iHeartMedia." They've become so robotic that they don't care about the local stuff anymore. They care about turning out robotic, mechanized stuff that has zero heart, zero love for the locals. Oh and also at that point in time when we started it back in 2016.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, actually it was like the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. For the Love of Punk, which was God rest Johnny, but. They were actually kind of slowing down and it kind of lost speed and everyone who was involved in For the Love of Punk had kind of dissolved. Now there's still some people that are still involved with it. A lot of them have actually started off For the Love of Locals, which is also a great organization too, great page. But we've actually taken the subgenre of punk, alternative, goth, rockabilly, ska, really kind of made it our own here and when we used to be only Denver-based, now we're kind of growing to more of a Colorado base. So
cool.
And beyond those borders, too.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So if you can't tell already, listeners, schools and gals, we're basically touching on the fact here that Colorado Punk Rock Army came in to help out the underground scene and get more of a spotlight on it for bands who they can have more than just two people at their shows. Exactly. And at highest compliments, you guys have been doing an amazing job. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah.
like seriously,
Try.
like when I went to your page and I looked at it, like the fact that you're just on top of it and you're just like, hey, you know, we couldn't tag this band, please get the word out. Like, you're really like not just throwing it, like being detached with it, like you really care, and that's so nice to see. That's so awesome to see, and it just it rang a bell with me and Cody, because that's like the same reason why we started this podcast. It's like there's so many horror movies out there that are underground that don't get a lot of, you know, attention, that we need to kind of put a light on them. So it's like,
And that's also why we started doing our band interviews, because we really wanted to reach out to like the
Yeah.
local
Oh,
bands, like
definitely.
help them get a leg up and stuff like that.
Well, and it's so hard right now because the way that the music industry has gone, I'd say in the last probably 10 years, is that if you're not on a major label, you're not getting any kind of promotion backing from the big leagues. You're working 3 jobs to pay for one Facebook boost. That's going to cost half of your paycheck. And you might only reach 1,200 people, and out of those 1,200, maybe only 200 people will like your page.
yeah.
So we started doing album reviews where we check out, Colorado, but also a lot of international punk bands as well. And we found that by expanding our base to those bands, those guys and girls who kind of need that leg up, we're actually helping them connect with other artists. We're then connecting with other artists. We're growing an amazing network of bands to where, let's say somebody in Italy says, hey, I want to play New York City, but I don't know anybody. Then I can get on the phone and I can call somebody in New York and call a band in New York and say, hey, so-and-so's coming from Milan, and they want to play the west side of New York. Can you hook them up? And it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does, but that's what we do. That's what we're here for.
That was how we got our first show, actually. It was that a band from Nashville, good old No Loves, hit us up, and they're like, hey, we're a month away from our show, and the venue bounced us because a bigger band is coming through, and so they asked for our help. And we were able to do it in a month's time, and that was not easy. That was not easy at all.
But you guys did it. You rocked it, and you accomplished it.
Never want to do it in that short time frame again.
But still, though, the fact that you're able to even pull it off within that amount of time, like, bravo.
Yeah.
So we can only kind of like try to understand being a promoter, booking, and just anything in that area, like how rough that must be.
Booking is always the hard part.
Yeah.
It's just hard getting people to contact you back. I mean, and I think a lot of it is just because a lot of people see us as don't understand what our mission is and what we want to do. I think a lot of people see us as competition when we really just want to help everybody.
Spread the love. There's enough love for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Agreed. And it
Especially in like the independent punk rock scene and stuff
for
like
sure.
that. Like,
oh yeah,
because like when you think about like the music scene nowadays, like you were saying with iHeartRadio and stuff, like they don't really spread to punk or
Not at
No.
all.
even like parts of metal and stuff.
I
And
would
that's,
say not since the mid to late '90s when Green Day and Offspring were popular.
yeah.
I mean, they'll pick a band and they'll say we're gonna produce 5,000 other bands that sound just like that
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
everybody likes this one band, and that's how you end up with Nickelback.
it's everyone loves Blink-182, so we need copies of Blink-182 till we get to Nickelback, right?
That's right.
That's what we're basically going at this point.
Well, and one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but one
No,
of
it's
the
okay.
one of the things that is really cool and unique about Denver and Colorado is, and you're going to hear people complain about it, and they're going to say there's so many people that have moved here, the housing market is crazy, there's no jobs. But I got to looking at it like this: almost 5 nights of the week in Denver, Colorado, you're going to find a show, a punk show, a rock show, a hip hop show. You're going to find a show. Now, 5-6 years ago on a Monday night, no way. If you wanted to hear a show, you got to go over and do trivia at your local bar to hear something live.
You go to Cricket on the Hill and listen to actual crickets on a hill.
There you go. And now, almost 5 nights of the week, you're getting a show, or if it's not a show, maybe it's an art gallery, and that's, to me, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was 16, I remember going down Broadway and seeing flyers. But again, they were like, "Hey, this really popular band, their next show is 3 months from now."
Yeah.
Bro.
You're like,
All
at that
right.
point, you're like, I'm probably going to forget.
And the
I
one,
got busy that night.
the one thing, though, that I think I do have somewhat of a political statement. It's not really against the president or anything like that, but it has to do with all ages shows.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the one thing that Colorado, Denver, and mainly it has a very. I mean, Aaron Say over at 7C has done an amazing job, but I feel like Aaron might be overwhelmed with the bit of shows that he might have to put on over there, and I feel like the other venues really need to stand up and have more local shows for
underage bands,
Exactly.
because there's a lot of
Absolutely.
young talent here that really needs a lot more exposure than they're getting.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, when
we
we
both
were
were.
back in high school, like, I was in a punk band, and trying to book a gig, like, was the hardest thing ever. Like, just anything, because we weren't 18, 19, like, we
Yeah.
were super young.
And that's worse, and that's what makes it worse, because like not only are you limiting the amount of people who can come and see your show, but the people that play in the band
Yeah.
are also
Yeah,
having
for
this
sure.
like obstacle trying to get through a door.
Well,
I mean, it used to be. I mean, there were even bowling alleys where,
Yeah.
where high school bands could play. You know, I mean, I think Funplex even used to do that for
They
a
did.
while.
Yeah,
And-
we
Yeah,
were
and-
seeing some live bands of Funplex.
Yeah.
It's basically you have a family member or like a tight friend who worked at a bar who would like pull some strings for you to get
Yeah,
you in.
exactly.
Because like same with Cody here. Like I was in a band once and we were getting ready to do a show, but we didn't have anywhere to go. And like I think the drummer at the time was just like, "Yeah, the bar that my dad works at might let us play." And I'm like, "I mean, that's cool. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
show. It's a show."
yeah.
And then you
You
were
know.
kicked out by 10.
We didn't even get there.
Oh,
Well, and I,
That band were-
8 o'clock bedtime.
Yeah.
I read a statistic somewhere that said that less kids, as we get into this kind of technology age, are picking up instruments. And that really bothered me because I feel like as soon as we limit art and music, that means something's going to die off. You know, it might have a strong rebound sometime in the future.
well, I definitely think the kids are the ones who are going to carry the torch
Exactly.
anyway. So those
I
are
think
those
though
that we
that should come
foster.
with an asterisk, because I think there are more people. While there are fewer people playing actual instruments, I think there are more people that are going to like MIDI consoles and things like that.
True, but
Yeah.
on that note, I'm going to disagree
And
with
keyboards.
you, Andy. As
Yeah.
much, I do have a lot of respect for DJs that can go out there and do what they do, but
Right.
the thing is most of that is not music that they've personally created.
No, it's not raw.
And it could be. It could be, but in my opinion, when you see a band and when you hear that music, you feel it in your heart. And now, I've gone to EDM shows with my daughter, and been bored off my butt, and gone, I'm trying to find the beat, but it's just repetitive. It
Right.
feels like it came right out of RoboCop's mouth.
Well, I mean, let's just put it out in the open there. You know, the EDM, it's the way they make most of the music is they buy sound samples or they are subscribe to a sound sample like.
Well, everybody works differently. I mean, for example,
Exactly.
you have Grizz, who goes around the world actually and records different artists and mixes those artists in. So they're live samples that he has recorded from live musicians, but he uses them in a
secondhand way.
yeah, and it's a very brilliant way. But then he also plays his own saxophone. I mean, the way I look at Grizz actually is more like the next incarnation of jazz. The way
Right.
that the way
Sure,
that it ends
sure,
up coming
sure.
out.
Which is good for that genre, but I don't think that's very specific to the genre that we try to cater to. Which
True.
True.
that's where we want people to be able to pick their guitars up, and and I think that's I have a kid in a band, and that's why for me it's really important for them to get out there and be heard, and and the thing is that they go harder than we do. Let's face it, and it's rad to watch them.
They have
get
the
in
energy
there.
to.
Yeah, it's rad to watch them get in there and rip up pits and stuff. I'm like, oh, that makes the mom heart feel really
Yeah.
good, So I think that
When
we
we-
gotta foster that.
And we went to the recent show with Bad Cop, Cheap Perfume,
Great show.
Overtime, and
Those are good
Rotten
guys. I love-
Reputation.
Great music.
And there was probably maybe an 8 and 9-year-old little girl in the audience, and Stacy D from Bad Cop brought her up on stage, and that little girl
Gave her a pick. Yeah.
and gave her a
Yeah.
pick, and she's gonna remember that for the rest of her life.
Totally.
We'll probably be paying to buy her, see her at some point.
And-
I'm sure down the road.
And in 20 years from now, the thing is if you were to ask a kid that's really into EDM, they're going to say, 20 years ago, tell me one song that you remember that struck a chord from you. What do you remember?
Right.
Now, for me,
Boots
it would
and cats and boots and cats.
for me personally, it was probably Roots and Radicals by Rancid.
Of course.
That album for me was kind of like my launching point, to where I was like, I know what direction I'm going and I know the kind of person I want to be. But if you were to ask somebody in that EDM genre, they might go, I don't know, all I remember is it went dun 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 dun. and maybe not. Maybe they have certain DJs that they like, but anyhow.
Right.
I think the first thing about punk that grabbed me was the comedy of punk. Songs
That
like
too.
Kids on Coffee by the
Exactly.
Descendants and
Right.
Bottles to the Ground by NoFX and I
Drink
liked the
Punk.
humor. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. Of
God
course.
Save the Queen.
Yeah.
or Sid Vicious My Way.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to touch on there. So, and Lala actually made a very perfect standing point to go off of, which is raw. Like, punk is raw. It's do it yourself. It's always been
Yeah.
that feel of doing it yourself. And I think that's the difference that we get with punk music than we get with like metal or, EDM or hip hop. Probably not hip hop as much, just because underground hip hop also kind of shares the same thing of do it yourself.
Sure.
But punk's always been about make your own instruments, make your own music, make your own logos, do your own thing. And what really stood out with me with Colorado Punk Rock Army, it made me think of the story of Brian Dennehy, which I don't know if that rings a bell with a lot of people, but
Bomb City.
exactly, Bomb City, which is the
Great
sad
movie.
story of a young 19-year-old punk who, named by Brian Dennehy, was murdered, and his murder basically got off scot-free. And it was all just because the way he dressed, the way he looked, and he was trying to promote shows, and he was just trying to make a good scene. He was trying to speak about his anger through art and through punk. And I think that's what's so appealing about this genre, and why me and Cody fell in love with it when we were younger, and why you guys fell in love with it when you were younger, is that it speaks through a horn that you don't really get with a lot of other music. I mean, metal gets really close to it. It really does, but it doesn't get that exact nature of punk rock, where it's what's punk rock? It's always been the underbelly of society, and seeing what is wrong with the world and being mad about it before everyone else gets mad about it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'd like to come back to Colorado Punk Rock Army a little bit, but I also want to talk a little bit more now about the culture of punk rock and just how it got started. We did do a little research to try and kind of like narrow this down a little bit, just because it's so massive and it's such a big thing. So for anyone who doesn't know what punk rock is, if you're listening to this podcast and don't know what it is, if you're listening to us for a while and don't know what it is,
I was like, who are you?
I know, right?
How did you find it?
Exactly.
Where am I?
So punk rock is a music genre that developed in the mid-1970s in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. Rooted in 1960s garage rock and other forms of what is known as proto-punk music, punk rock bands rejected perceived excesses of mainstream 1970s rock. Punk bands typically produced short or fast-paced songs with hard-edged melodies and singing styles, stripped-down instrumentation, and often political anti-establishment lyrics. Punk embraces a DIY ethic. Many bands self-produce recordings and distribute them through independent record labels and other informal channels. And the reason I want to bring that in and want to bring in Bomb City, and listeners, if you can hear, we have two dogs playing with each other in the background going crazy. But the reason I want to bring Bomb City in and want to make that statement is because you guys remind me of Brian Dennehy and the mission that he had to get punk rock out there, to get art out there. And the fact that, punk rock has always been making your own stuff and bringing it out. I mean, I guess my question that I'm wanting to ask is, do you feel that in this day and age, with getting more spotlight on punk rock, it's taking it away from its roots of DIY? Or do you think it's just kind of become this hybrid of do-it-yourself, but also expand a little bit into a more modern way of growing? What do you think?
Well, I mean, nobody does anything completely by themselves. Everything has components that are added by other people. Even if you made something completely from scratch yourself, somebody else had to build the guitar, and my point is, just walking into a place isn't going to get you discovered.
Right.
Everybody's going to have help of one kind or another along the way, and there's, that's just what we want to be, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I guess my end on that is, and we actually, when we kind of first started up, once we hit 1,200 followers, we got a message from some guy in India who wanted to pay us $2,000 for our page, and we were like, hell no. You remember that? Yeah. We were like, hell no. You
Sorry,
know what I mean?
Sanjeet.
Of course, at first he wanted me to send him Bob's and Vagine, but you know,
I bet he had a Nigerian prince as a friend too.
not really, but yeah, we could have sold out right there. But you know, part of punk in general is that no matter how big it ever grows, there's still going to be heart that goes into it, and there's still going to be blood, sweat, and getting yelled at by your parents and your boss for having too many tattoos, for having colored hair. But there's that element of heart is still there.
Yeah.
I mean, even
Well,
look
you
at
can see through selling out. Like, you know, anybody who is anybody in this can say, that's a sellout sort of thing, and they really try and steer clear from that kind of stuff anyway. So I don't think any amount of... I mean, look at what pop punk did in the 90s.
Right.
Like, everybody who didn't get into that scene saw right through it and was like, nah. And then they went hard and heavy back to the DIY roots.
Sure.
You know, I think that anytime the pendulum swings so far in one direction, it's going to make, you know, everybody on the other side go, let's, you know, drill down and do this, go for it harder. And
Right.
so, you know, yeah. Is there a DIY component to punk? Absolutely. Can there also, you know, be more of like an expansion to that? I think for sure. You know, and I think that, you know, anybody who is anybody is going to be able to look at it and say, that's too far on that side.
Yeah.
You know, they've lost their heart, or they've, you know, and there's always going to be that
Then
too.
again, though, I think, and what's great about that point, though, is and especially in Denver in general, is that you have so much unique music. So even though if you wanted, let's say you wanted to go see Almataha, which is kind of semi-hard, you know, I'd say hardcore, or even AFD for that matter.
Right.
But then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you've got bands like Came and Took It, Stray the Course, who are more on the pop punk side. But what's nice about that is we can throw all of them together and put on a great show.
But they're still DIY. They're not
To
like
all of
a
that. To all of
yeah.
that.
Those pop punk
Exactly.
bands are still amazing DIY. I wasn't saying anything.
Oh,
against
no.
them. I'm just saying once you get overproduced,
Exactly.
and you know, and you're taking your punk music to this sound engineering studio, and you're mixing down all
course.
that amazing, you know, edge to it. That's what I'm saying. Is you
Exactly.
don't anybody
Exactly.
can see through that, but pop punk definitely has
for sure. And
all
that-
the heart. That's
and
not what I meant.
That's what makes Denver great, though, is that the one thing that's nice about punk is it's all inclusive.
Absolutely.
So let's say you're not real keen on hardcore. You just it's too hard for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you like pop punk, or maybe you like more skate punk, which can almost be metal sometimes,
Or ska.
Yeah.
or ska for that matter.
folk
Yeah.
punk, you know,
Exactly.
with the brawlers.
Crust
Ska
punk.
jazz like the Dendrites.
Or
Yeah.
86B. I mean, if you like some acoustic with your punk, I mean, that the all inclusive. I can never say inclusive. I can't say it.
All-inclusivity.
Thank you.
Come for someone who literally messes up a word
Exactly.
every episode we have.
Figgy.
You're totally.
You can't say effigy. This is a figgy.
He's never gonna let it go.
No,
He's-
not.
he's like, I was so serious. I thought it was a figgy. It was effigies. We were talking about effigies, and I thought it was a figgy the entire time. And I was confident that it was a figgy. And he's just like, "You dumb motherfucker." It's
I am
effigies.
never going to hear that Ministry song the same way again. I'm not an effigy.
I was so confident about it. See, it's cool, Phil. I don't even stress it. Don't even stress it. Cody, what do you think? You want to add anything in before we move on, or on the topic?
No, I'm good.
When it comes to the DIY thing, I want to add one thing. There's the thing that I think has changed punk culture more than anything else is YouTube. And the reason is nobody's discovering music on the radio anymore.
No.
Nobody listens to the radio anymore except for the Comedy Channel, you know?
Yeah.
Over the last 5-10 years, most of the music that I've discovered has either been on Bandcamp or YouTube or Pandora or, back before it got bought out, Last FM, and that only contributes to the DIY. People record it at home, people mix it at home, people master it at home, then they release it on YouTube and on Bandcamp, and it's just it's not. You don't have to have a super expensive studio. You don't have to you don't have to find a recording label to get your stuff out there.
I've got a great example of that. So I went back in, I think it was 2009. I found a band that's more popular now called the Rumjacks, and they were out of Australia. They're based out of the UK now. They had a song called an Irish pub song, and when I first watched the video, I think it had maybe 2,000 views. That particular video that came out in 2009 is up to 45 million now.
Oh snap!
And they're touring, they're doing wonderful, but that video and the result of that came from fans going, "Oh my God, I love this band! I got to give it to my friend. I got to show it to, my dad who's Irish, or something like that." They're passing it around, they're sharing it, they're getting it out there, and that's what we're trying to do as well.
Yeah.
Maybe on a smaller level, we're sharing these bands that you might never. You're gonna go, "Who the heck is that?"
Yeah.
And that's what's great about that's what's great about things like YouTube, is that just the discovery alone is just amazing.
Because you'll pop in a band you like, and it'll just kind of build this playlist with a whole bunch of other stuff that maybe sounds like it, and you'll come across something that you're like, I've never heard of this before. You look at it, and it turns out it's some band from Iowa that maybe never even ends up leaving Iowa. You know.
Mm-hmm. Before we continue on, you were going to say something. What was
No,
it?
they kind of touched on it with the YouTube.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's actually what I was. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of like almost like guerrilla marketing, like to get your brand out there. You have to like, hey guys, share it. Like it's kind of exactly how we did for our podcast.
Yeah.
Where we're
Comment, like, share.
Yeah, comment, like, share. Had to tell our friends, hey, can you listen to us? Like you don't even have to listen to us, just download us, and then like tell your friends about us and stuff like that. And like that's just kind of the way to get known anymore.
It it brought us back to like when we were in bands, like trying to get our band out there that we were in at the time. Just be like, just check us out. Yeah, we're gonna be here. And now we're just like, check out our podcast.
For you.
Well, and just a message to all the even just artists in general, that it's when you first start into it, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're like, you're like, God, we put on a show and like only my mom showed up. But that's a start. That's
a show.
Start. It's a show.
And that's
the bartender's gonna go home and tell his wife or her husband or her kids, hey, I saw this great band the other night. You might like them. Here's their single.
Yeah.
That's it's word of mouth, and that's the DIY part of punk and in art in general is that.
She scared herself.
Sorry, listeners. Cody's mom actually got a new puppy, and Cody brought it over, and now she's like interested in the world around her. So
6 months.
She's 6 months old. So sorry, Phil.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Basically, it's even though it seems overwhelming, don't give up.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I told Andy a number of times, I want to quit. I can't do this.
Yeah.
It takes a massive amount of energy sometimes, but
it is
finally,
very time consuming.
Finally, and how we have even though we're donation based, we don't ever pull off a lot out of it, and it's definitely not for the income. We'll put it that way.
We've both put a significant amount of money
into
this, and we haven't made a penny back on it.
Well, and I mean to add on to like all the hard work you're doing. I mean, even when I talked to Mixed Kid Fridays, I don't know if it was on the episode or it was before the episode, but we talked about CPRA, and they said that how great you guys are because you connected with them and they connected with you, and because some of their members know Colorado Punk Rock Army, and even Buri Mia, that's our latest band interview we came out with. Like it goes back to what you guys talking about, because they recorded their entire album in I think it's Justin's basement by themselves, and even with Jeff from Last Real Hero, like when we had him on here, he even talked about like just how strong the punk rock scene's coming out here, and I don't know if you guys are, but in my personal opinion, and Cody might share the same sentiment with me, is that I feel like you guys have been a mainstay is why it's become so much stronger here, why it's been getting stronger. I mean, you guys started in, you said it was late 2015, right?
Yeah, right about there.
So you started late 2015. It's about 2.5 years later, maybe, but maybe more than that. You guys have connected a lot of people. I mean, even Phil helped us out of a jam for October, because we didn't have any bands to bring on for the month of October for an interview. It was like we got nothing, and that's actually how this got started. Is I hit up Phil, I hit up the page directly. I was like, hey, we're a local podcast. We bring bands on. If you got any that would love to come on, get an interview, we'd love to hook them up, and you'd just be helping us out. And he did. He came through, and he hooked us up with Jeff from Last Real Hero, and that saved the day. You guys saved our butts. Pure and simple.
And if you guys like oi punk and ska, check out Pueblo's The Last Real Hero. They're playing CPRA's Happy Thanksgiving show on 11/24 at Tennyson's Tap.
Exactly.
And get there early because it might sell out.
It will sell out. That's not the
It's
biggest
a very
place.
small venue.
It's a small venue, but we do, and we have the interview with Jeff from Last Real Hero promoting that show. Listeners, if you haven't listened to it yet, go check it out. It was an October's band showcase episode. Check it out. It was a great interview, and you actually get to check out a hot new single from them on that episode.
Nice.
So, shameless plug.
That's what we do.
Exactly. It's what Cody said. You got to guerrilla market it, right?
Exactly.
So going forward, we're talking about punk rock. We're talking about how you have to be underground. Well, you don't have to be underground, but how it's primarily underground, and you have to find these ways to get it kind of from staying strictly underground and kind of more to a mainstream level. Before we tap into the horror and how it taps in, one thing I want to ask is, now that we do live in a climate where technology is more prevalent and social media is everywhere, do you feel like there is this challenge to what punk rock used to be of having to conform to more of a mainstream way to survive, or do you think there's just a lot of pushback to do that, or what's your guys' stance on that?
Evolution is inevitable.
Right?
That's just true. Everything changes with time. If nothing changed, then they'd all still sound like New York Dolls.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. I was gonna say, think of it, Blink-182, like one of the biggest pop punk bands and everything. Like if they sounded more like the Sex Pistols and Ramones of old and stuff like that, there was no way they'd be as popular as they were, because they had to go from an anti-establishment to more romantic songs in a sense, but they still had
to have a range.
Yeah, but they still had some of their anti-establishment songs and stuff like that, where it's just don't conform to to societal norms instead of down with the government. It was be yourself, basically.
Yeah, they had to find their niche for their music. They had to find.
And then it was same with the Offspring literally evolved from them themselves evolved from hardcore anti-establishment to more of a pop sounding thing of going
Uno,
from
dos, tres, cuatro, cinco,
exactly. Exactly.
we
know where we're going.
Definitely listen to the original songs, and then now listen to the Coming For You that came out 2 years ago.
Yeah,
definitely sounded a lot older than their the album that came out just before that song.
that took it back to more the Americana.
Yeah,
kind of
and it's
age.
they kind of had because I like using Offspring as an example for the evolution of punk, because they went from very anti-establishment
So did
to
AFI.
when you listen to
Smash.
the album Smash.
Now we
Yeah,
could
Smash,
get Green Day to go back to their 10,000 Slappy Hours times. That would be, when they were on Lookout, that would be great.
I would say sorry, go ahead.
Was just finishing off the Offspring, and then you hear the song Coming For You. It definitely went back to the Smash style of album out, while they went from anti-establishment to kind of anti-society back to an anti-establishment, because Coming For You is all about the government's coming for you and stuff like that.
But I think that's what I was saying earlier, is that people see through that after a while.
For sure.
Yeah.
And they did.
I think they saw that themselves, and they were like, whoa, okay, let's go back to what worked before or whatever, because they started going down that path, and anybody who liked them from the old days was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
But they have to go back to that, because you can see through some of that.
Yeah, because just like Andy said, evolution's inevitable. You have to evolve.
And then you have bands like Green Day that honestly really try to put that behind them, and you really saw Green Day doing that when they went and toured with the Queers.
True.
They were really trying to chase the elements out that were
True.
And Dookie.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Well, it was Insomniac is the one that killed it for me. After that one, I was like, and actually, Insomniac wasn't bad for me. I think it was right after that Insomniac.
Warning.
I think so.
See, I liked Warning.
I was just done. I was like, you know what? I feel like I've heard in these 10, 15 songs on Warning I hear the future of Green Day, and it's going to sound just like this.
Yeah.
You get into that AC/DC syndrome, though, where everything sounds the same.
That's true.
But then they came back with Uno Dos Tres, and those 3 albums were awesome.
Yeah, I was surprised about
They
that.
were better, actually.
Because
I liked
after 21st Century Breakdown, I was like, I mean, it was a step in a decent direction because I didn't.
Yeah, that was when they were trying to get back to the core. That was
Uno
when they were
Dos
trying to
Tres
get
came
back
out,
to
and I
their
was like,
original message.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna.
It was almost like Billy Joe and Tim finally started hanging out, and again they were like, well, maybe you were right. You know?
But the one thing I want to say on Andy's evolution note, though, is that the only way that it's going to evolve and stay alive is if the fans continue to share and mention, use word of mouth, because the mainstream music in general wants to push out underground. It just does. It wants to get it out of the way. So when you turn on Spotify, all you're going to hear is Nicki Minaj 24/7.
Oh my god.
Oh man,
My ears bleed every time. I hate it so much.
So what I want to add on to that is, but I will say that my first Green Day album was Nimrod, and I still love
Which
that
is a great
album.
one.
It's
a
solid.
great
I
one.
make
Was
the
that
argument.
was that after Insomniac?
I can't
I
remember.
think maybe it was.
I feel like it came before it, but I could be mistaken.
You're
That was
okay.
the.
I think that was the one right
that's a
after
solid album
Insomniac,
all the way
if I
through,
remember
especially
right.
for the song "King for a Day,"
Yeah.
which is probably the best song about being a drag queen ever.
Yeah, yeah. I
and being
remember
proud
that.
of it too.
Yeah,
Like,
which is
I'm not
which is
mocking
great
it at all.
message.
Like,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
"King for a Day," Princess by Dawn.
Well,
Like,
and-
you gotta love that lyric.
Let's look at the Dam too. I mean, they started in the early mid '70s in London, and they came out as
74, if I remember right.
yeah, and they came out around the same time as like Sex Pistols, Circle Jerk, Subhumans, but they evolved with their music. So when punk kind of dwindled off and became post-punk, they moved to kind of like a goth sound, which wasn't all that popular. I mean,
Well, that
I
was
love
just a split that happened in the whole
liked it.
in
Well,
the
that
whole
opening
London
scene,
scene at that
exactly.
time.
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
when the Sex Pistols split, half the fans went off and to Susie and the Banshees because that's where Sid went at
sure.
first.
Yeah.
true, but I mean,
the first album was 1977.
yeah.
Oh,
So
it was-
I think they started in '74.
I checked it for you,
got
don't
together. Yeah, but I mean, if you look at them, they went through punk, post-punk, gothic to a rockabilly, and then they've just kind of evolved ever since. Kind of throwing in every new album they put out, you hear
Something
a little
different.
bit of everything, which is great. And I think if bands continue to kind of, you can stay true to your roots, but always bring something new. A great example is Bad Religion put out "The Alt-Right Is Not." The kids are alt-right, which I was like, and it was kind of funny because I mentioned something on Instagram. I was like, hey, how do you feel about the kids are alt-right? And everybody was like, thumbs down.
Yeah.
And most of the comments were like, it sounded like it came right out of an LA music studio. And so I got onto Bad Religion's Facebook page, and they were asking the same thing. And I said, yeah, it sounds like it came out of an LA music studio.
Right.
And, Greg Gaffin actually responded, and he said, well, that came out of my studio.
He's like, well, fuck me then.
And I actually thought it was hilarious. And I was like, you know what? At least there's some humor. And then they came out with The New Rights of Man, which is 100%
So good.
so much better.
And you know
So-
what? What's so admirable is that it's like what Cody said with Blink-182 and what we said about Green Day is that they kind of changed a lot throughout the years. But to stay an aggressive anti-establishment punk rock band and stay big
And stay that way, exactly.
is kind of a huge mark for you. Like, it's a huge mark of honor. Like Bad Religion, No Effects, those are probably two of the most prominent still. Like, and you can even argue Descendants and Anti-Flag are even still kind of hanging in there too. Like,
Descendants aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, no. We
I actually I work with the drummer's daughter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
shameless plug.
But
One of them lives in Fort Collins, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ron, I think Milo's still there,
Stevens.
isn't he?
And a big
Bill
shout out
Stevens.
to
Yeah.
the Blasting Room and Ryan Dykstra Records up in Fort Collins. They're putting out some great music right now. I Am the Owl, which is speed punk, and Came and Took It. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of other great music. Plasma Canvas.
Sinister
They're out of Fort
Pig.
Collins.
Is that
Yeah,
Fort
Sinister Pig.
Collins?
Boner.
So
Well, the other thing I was going to add on though with No Effects and Bad Religion, all these bands, and I know Bad Religion isn't related to it, but going back to the guerrilla marketing with YouTube, and then we're going to move on to the horror punk, is what I think is really cool about YouTube is that it really, sorry, Lala pointed to her Misfits shirt, everyone, so she knows what's coming up. She's got it down. But I think what's really cool about YouTube and podcasting and, like, you know, being able to just make Facebook pages is that we can all kind of connect in the sense that you're able to follow bands and bands have these platforms to get more out there and be more open, where it's like back in the day you would always have to, you know, if you didn't have your own recording, you have to pay to record.
Exactly.
But now it's, as long as you got your own stuff, you can basically set up your own YouTube page. And what's even cool is, like, Fat Records, like, they have their own YouTube page, so you can follow them and they'll, like, actually put new music up for you for bands that you haven't heard of yet. Like, that's how I heard about what is it, Direct Hit and the Bomb Pops was through their YouTube channel. And so I think that's such a cool thing that bands have available to them now, is that, well, if you're not going to let us record, then we'll just do it ourselves and fuck you, basically.
Where did we see the Bomb Pops? We saw them open for someone.
Oh, it was a long time ago. I don't
I
remember.
want to say it was about a year ago.
No, I think it was longer than that.
I've always wanted to see them. I think they're kick-ass.
Oh, they are. Oh, big time.
Like, that's kind of going on with the evolution thing. I wanted to make one last thing. Like,
Go for
bands
it.
that do kind of fail, like, it really sucks with the Buzzcocks. Like, they just kind of fell off the face of the earth. And, like, because I grew up, my dad introduced me to punk rock with the Ramones, Sex Pistols, and the Buzzcocks. And I was super excited to see them, like, it was, like, I think our second Riot Fest we went to.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, I was so excited to see him. I was like, fucking, like, one of my childhood punk bands I grew up listening to.
Right.
And it was, like, me and 10 people at this giant festival seeing the Buzzcocks. And I was like, what the fuck?
No, I remember
Yeah.
that. I was there with you.
that
I was
is
there
right.
with you.
I
I
was
was
just
there
like-
with you.
Because, like...
And they did their, like, classic hits, too.
Yeah, like,
Like,
all their good shit. And I was just like, I mean, we were having a great time. Me and, like, the 10 people there were mosh pitting and stuff like that and having a great time. And it's just, like... In the back of my head, I'm just like, what? Where's everyone else?
That was like the surprise of seeing the Vibrators at 7th Circle.
Yeah. It was just like, it was disheartening. Like you said, like, it kind of like hurt my feelings a bit. Like, no,
and I share that sentiment with you because
so many people showed up for the Vibrators.
That was an
great.
awesome show.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to touch on that real quick. So I went to go see Bad Religion, Stiff Little Fingers, and The Offspring maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And Bad Religion and Stiff Little Fingers absolutely killed it.
Right.
Amazing show.
They
And
always
it
do
amazes
such a
me
good
that Stiff Little Fingers actually started out in I'm thinking the late 70s, early 80s, right about the same time as the Damned, Sex Pistols. And I don't know if anybody's ever listened to Stiff, but all of their songs have amazing heart. They actually, all of their music is based off of the Troubles in Ireland and the Easter Rising event. So after their show was done, we're patiently waiting for Offspring. We're all super excited. They come out, do 5 songs, and call it a day. No encore, no nothing. And I immediately said, you know what? I'm never listening to this band ever again.
Good for you.
And I haven't touched them since. And it was the fact that you've got two
Hurts the Offspring would do
two
that.
historically. You've got one band that has this giant amount of popularity and can get fans from any corner of the world, and then you have these 2 little bands, Bad Religion and Stiff Little Fingers, that they have a ton of fans themselves, but I felt like they had a lot more heart, that they wanted to be there for the music and for the fans, and maybe they were just tired. I don't know, but I lost a huge amount of respect, and I feel like, again, their evolution kind of, has ended, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you said how long ago was that show?
It's
3-4 years?
Fiddler's Green, 2015 maybe.
Were we at that show?
No, we saw him with Pennywise.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
2014.
Pennywise
yeah.
is a
And
fun
then I
show.
saw
Yeah,
them
it was,
yeah,
it was
every time.
Offspring,
Every
Pennywise,
time.
and Bad Religion.
And then they showed up to Lion's Lair later to hang out with everybody. Noodles and
The Dwarf?
Dexter.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
I would add
that
on,
was-
though, that... I'm so sorry. I
it's totally
apologize. I was going to say that I'm wondering if the reason why Offspring kind of just was lackluster about it is because if that's when I think that was the time where Dexter was more focused on being like a professor than being
that's
in
a
band.
possibility.
And I think
Yeah.
they were either coming off the coattails of it or just came out with their like most recent album, which like probably had the biggest backlash of a song they ever did,
because
which
it was
is
so poppy.
the
was
California Bumpin'.
Yeah,
That's what it's
California
called.
Bumpin'.
Yeah, and like
I
so
know.
many people
So
hated
bad.
it. It was like straight up. It sounded something that you would hear on 105.9.
Like, I listened
and
to it and
that's
I didn't
a
even
lot
think
of
it was
people
Offspring.
hated it for that.
And then they came out with Coming For
it's-
You, and I was like, that's what I want to hear from Offspring.
Yeah, people had that exact reaction to that song. It was.
Yeah,
and-
but
and-
if you're gonna go out there and you're gonna give a piss poor performance, don't do it.
Oh no,
As
I
a-
agree.
to-
I completely agree.
I mean, in
Still
my
do it.
opinion, any band, for whatever reason, unless it's like, so we went to go see Flogging Molly and Rise Against, and Flogging Molly couldn't come because the lead singer's wife was going to labor. I was like, that's a valid excuse. But
Right.
any
Yes.
other band that plays, like, starts their show and then just stops in the middle of it and, like, quits, I'm like, okay, David Grohl broke his leg
Yeah.
on stage and continued the show literally while they're bandaging his leg up and he's on drugs for it. He's like, nah, fuck it, show goes on. Like, I was like, unless like it's something like that, I lose respect. If
Well,
it's
I
not.
completely agree, and I think Bad Religion may be a little older. They're about the same age as like Offspring, right?
Actually, I
I
think
think-
I think a little bit
I think,
older
I think
than
they predate
Offspring.
him a little bit
So
by maybe
what
3
makes
or
that
4
more
years.
frustrating to hear is that Bad Religion's an older band, yet they're coming out doing a solid show, playing
Stiff little
fast.
fingers. is
Yeah,
way
exactly,
better.
Well,
exactly.
yeah.
And just kicking ass, and then
Not only that, but the difference in the music is with Offspring. I don't really hear so much about, and maybe I'm just not hearing it. I don't hear social issues so much.
yeah,
I and I mean you do in like maybe Come Out and Play, but other than that, it's like Mota More. I mean,
yeah.
there's the social issues that Bad Religion. I mean, definitely anti-establishment, Stiff Little Fingers, anti the UK government. I mean, huge difference.
Right.
And maybe that's just due to the popularity that Offspring has compared to the other two. They're more kind of bubblegum-ish in a way, not necessarily, but whereas the lead singer Stiff Little Fingers had to hide with his mom in an alleyway where UK English troops
Yeah.
went down his street, and
It's all about the influences.
and it's about those experiences
Yeah.
too.
Well, and last thing I'll just add in for that is that, I think the Offspring's music's always been primarily focused on the anger of one person,
Yeah,
and
I see
how they
that
view
too.
society, where at Bad Religion's is the problems of society in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know.
We, not an I.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so, and that influences your writing and your playing style so much differently, wherever you're going with it, for each one, because it's like songs like Self-Esteem, like from Offspring, are obviously going to hit on a different level.
Oh, for sure.
We've
For
all
sure,
been
'cause that's
there
more
with,
of
like,
on an internal.
yeah, we've all been there with the
partner,
terrible
for
partner,
sure.
in our
completely.
life, where it's Offspring's Sorrow, like their song Sorrow.
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
Bad Religion. So.
What? Bad Religion. I'm sorry. The table was just about
I
to
was
be
like,
flipped.
I was like, you're gonna
Punches were
say
gonna be
Offspring.
thrown.
I was watching the entire night, like I know you're gonna say Offspring Sorrow.
Bad Religion Sorrow is primarily about like what if there wasn't major powers in society? Maybe there wouldn't be sorrow no more. But so going forward to horror punk, and that's where we want to end this episode on and talk about is horror punk, which is a music genre that mixes proto-gothic and punk rock sounds with morbid and violent imagery and lyrics, which are often influenced by horror films or science fiction B movies. The genre is similar to and sometimes overlaps with death rock, although death rock leans more towards an atmospheric gothic rock sound, while horror punk leans towards a 1950s influenced doo-wop and rockabilly sound. Horror punk music is typically more aggressive and melodic than death rock, and I think we can always start on the first band that really made it popular, the Misfits.
Never
Lynn
heard of
Danzig.
Dead Boys before them, actually.
Fair enough. Yes, Dead Boys. Dead Boys were definitely before them, but I do.
But they didn't make it popular.
They didn't make it.
Yeah,
impact
the
so
argument
much.
can be made that Misfits really kind of landed it as a mainstay.
True.
Like really brought light onto that.
When, and talk about DIY.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
Danzig's actually printing T-shirts before show starts, like in the green room of CBGB's.
He's just sitting there like, we gotta sell
Exactly.
I
these
have a
shirts.
tattoo.
There you go. And so, what I always just was like amazed by is like horror and punk. Like horror and punk, how well that mixes together. Because when you think about like punk and like how aggressive and fast paced and in your face it is, you would kind of like more so put it towards something to like Die Hard or like Rambo or something, and then it just mixes better with horror. And I've always kind of wondered why. And I think it's because horror has been the underdog of media, like film
For sure.
media. Where it's you're always going to have your rom-coms that are making millions, or your superhero movies that are making millions, but horror always has its underground.
It's got the
strong
grit.
following. It's got the grit.
It's
That's
got
a
some
perfect
heart.
way to put it. Grit.
Exactly.
And punk rock has the same grit, just on a different boot. You know, and I think that's what works so well. So let's just talk about why we love horror punk. Like, what stuck out to us. If y'all don't mind, I'll start it off real quick, and we'll just go around the table. Sound good? Sure.
No.
So for me, I would have to say it was Misfits that really got my interest into it, and then hearing so many other bands who follow along behind it, and even ours that are root for that, of just like One Eye Doll and even Guar, who are just kind of this horror influenced rock and roll in your face. I mean, it was shocking to me to hear a Misfits sing about going out and killing people, or you know, or Last Caress, the song Last Caress, probably, you know, the quote, I raped a baby today.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
Is that not
He raped the mother.
Oh, he raped the
Yeah,
mother. I'm
that's
sorry.
right.
He killed the baby.
Come on.
That was my mistake.
Jesus, like, get out. Get the
Strike two.
All right, you guys are now the Punk Rock Horror Podcast. I've had a good time. But no, that song, though, is just, like, when you listen to Green Day, you hear Basket Case, it's like, yeah, it makes sense, you know, I feel like we're going crazy, and then you hear Last Caress, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, it's a horror movie and a song.
It's a shocking song when you first hear it.
Yeah, and then you hear it all, then what gets funny is that you listen to it so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it
makes you want to move.
You listen to it so much that it doesn't faze you, but when people around you don't listen to it, they just kind of stare at you. They're just like...
So my favorite thing is having that or Scream come on in the kitchen while I'm washing dishes.
Yeah.
And I'm just like really getting into it.
I got something to say.
Yeah. They're just like, you alright back here, Cody? I'm like, I'm fucking great.
These plates are clean.
This is going to be the cleanest plate in the world.
They just like grab the plate, throw it at the wall, like, I'm doing fantastic.
Dishes are done.
So, Cody, yeah, let's just go around the table from you. Go ahead. Why do you love horror punk? What stood out for you?
Well, for me, again, it was the Misfits. Like, that, they're just kind of like my mainstay horror punk that I listen to right now. And I don't know, because I wouldn't say it's just because it was so raw or anything. It's just like, I just felt connected just because, like, I got into it immediately. First time I heard Misfits, it was Scream, and then I always forget the goddamn name of the song where he's like, ain't no goddamn son of a bitch.
Where Eagles Dare.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
thank
it.
you. Like, that is my favorite Misfits song right now. Like, and it just hits a chord with me, and like I love it. And so, like, I guess because listening to that, and then one of my favorite horror icons is Chucky. And he is kind of the most in my opinion, the most underrated of all the popular slashers, because, you know, everyone thinks Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger.
And you then Leatherface and then Pinhead. Then.
Yeah, Leatherface. I would say Chucky's a little above Pinhead.
And Leslie Vernon just gets
Literally.
thrown to shit.
Yeah. Or Victor Crowley nowadays.
Yeah.
It was just because, like, to me, like, I always connected with Chucky, mostly because, like, I always had a bunch of, like, action figures and stuff like that, but also just because he was the oddball out, and I always felt like I was the oddball out of my friends. And so listening to Misfits, like, because punk rock is usually for the Misfits, the oddballs out and stuff like that, like, that's how I kind of got connected with it so much. So,
Right on.
So, yeah, I have to say, I think actually my first kind of introduction, and a lot of people are going to disagree on this, but The Damned, actually kind of their gothic period with Phantasmagoria. There's quite a few songs on there that are super dark, they're spooky. If you listen to the that album in your room at night, you're gonna start looking around, going, "I just heard some shit. Now I'm freaking out." I mean, given it's not more on the horror side; it's more on the super spooky, suspenseful side.
We can count it.
Yeah. And after that, then I ventured into the Misfits. And again, a lot of people hate my favorite song is American Nightmare. Only because I tend to like more of the rockabilly side of the Misfits, whereas the horror punk.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked a lot of it, and actually, that was like my first box set was the Misfits collection.
In the coffin?
In the coffin.
Do you still have
that one
it?
too.
No, I wish I
do.
did.
And
But,
with the pin intact.
I
Just so you know,
actually,
listeners, Lala is better than all of us.
No,
That
I
was,
just have Big heart for them.
My
Fair.
my grandma
Understandably
actually
so.
bought me that. She it was like kind of my senior gift, and she's like, "Well, what do you want for your senior present?" And I was like, "Oh, the Misfits box set collection." And she called me, and she's like, "I'm not buying you a skeleton dude on a coffin with CDs in it."
You
And then
need Jesus.
And then she mentioned that too, and I said, "Well, I said, and you know, God rest her soul, she's gone now." But I said, "Oh, you know, they're very religious."
Oh, nice.
But they are, you know.
Yeah, no,
In a manner of speaking.
You just didn't say which religion.
which is talking about the avenue that they went down with. That's
And,
all.
and so on that note, I can't remember what song it is, but one of their songs was actually in. It's not. It was a TV show in the '90s, or not in the '90s, in the '80s, alongside the Twilight Zone.
The Outer Limits?
I think it was the Outer Limits. There's another one,
Don't be afraid
but
of the
there's
dark.
maybe it was that
Or
one.
Tales from the Dark Side?
Possibly. Somebody will have to look it up. But anyhow,
Did Tales of the Crypt have a TV show?
it's
There was also
the episode-
Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, Friday
had
the
their own
13th had
shows.
one. Yeah, it was like Freddy's
That was like an
Nightmare.
anthology. Yeah, both of those were
So-
anthology
so-
shows.
But the show actually had an episode called the African Doll, and the guy in the taxi is listening to the Misfits.
Oh,
And this
yeah.
lady gets out of the car.
I know what you're talking
and she
about.
goes into
Yeah,
her
it
house.
was
and
double
there's
doll.
I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And
I
that
think that was Tales from the Crypt.
I'm fairly certain.
I
that's
feel
I
like
think it was
Crypt.
Dark Side. I think it was. I want to
was
say it
gonna
was
say,
Tales
Dark
from the
Side
Dark
was
Sounds
Side.
like
Yes.
Tales from the Crypt to me.
Because it's
You
one
have
of
a
the.
computer.
I-
Like,
that's
Again, Lala's better than all of us.
anyhow that kind of piqued my interest into that side. And then George C. Scott, The Changeling. It's on YouTube now. I think it's freeware because it's so old. But
That's one of George C. Scott's best.
and it was actually most of it was filmed in Boulder. So and that movie is terrifying and more of get inside your head scary. Not the new.
Was it
Changeling.
the? So what I'm pulling up is a trilogy of terror.
That's
Is
a
that the
trilogy
one you're
terror.
talking about?
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
'cause that's the one that's bringing up because it's correct.
And you watch it now and it's kind of cheesy, but it's still
Oh, it's still great.
It still gets
Like,
It's so well-
and the,
that's a
the
well-made
doll is
word.
emancipated. Like,
Yeah,
why
oh,
not?
yeah,
Yep,
completely.
Yep. Trilogy of terror.
I was gonna say the old Tales from the Crypt shows and stuff like that. The one with the like creature in the little
Yeah,
in the
I
crates.
had that one. Yeah.
So freaking corny, but it still gets me because I was like the first like real anthology series I watched when I was a kid. And seeing the dude's face get ripped, I was like, "Now
You know
I'm going
the-
to bed."
That was crate 39 in. Was that one of the creep shows?
It could have been.
You know, it's Tales from the Crypt because I had the Crypt Keeper and everything in the beginning.
Oh, okay. I guess maybe there's two.
I'm
different
thinking of
things that we're
though
thinking
the
of.
Twilight Zone, the movie at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
When they're loading John Lithgow after he got off the airplane, they're loading
Yeah.
him into the ambulance.
Yeah.
And Dan Aykroyd says, "You want to see something really scary?" And he goes,
Oh yeah.
"Yeah."
And Andy, I think you were mentioning Tales from the Crypt, the ventriloquist dummy. Is that what you're touching on?
No, it was.
There's this crate and there's like this like monkey creature that like is living in the crate.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. I just can't.
It's called
Like crate.
or Lot 20 or something like that. Maybe it's got a number in it.
Might be crate. I think it's crate 39. Like you said before.
I'll look it up. But if you want to touch on horror punk, Andy, I'll find out for you.
I'm not sure where my actual affinity for the genre came in, but I've always been a huge fan of horror in general. My parents hated that about me when I was growing up, because my parents hate violence, but all I ever wanted to watch were killer clowns from outer space and.
the Dickies.
Yeah.
The Dickies did the theme.
How do you
to
feel
that.
How do you feel about it that Sci-Fi is doing a follow-up or remake to Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
I'll be interested to see it.
Me too.
I kind of halfway have to wonder if they're going to get Chris Titus, because that was actually his first movie.
Was it?
It was. He talks about it in like an interview.
He was in
he
Killer
did.
Clowns from Outer Space?
Yeah.
I've seen
It
that
was-
movie so
he's
many
like,
times.
He's
Where
like
is
one of
he
the
in it?
first people you see in the movie. He's just walking down the street, and then he's one of the kids making out in the park.
Holy shit! I gotta rewatch. I love that movie. I can't believe I never knew that. That's hilarious.
There was an interview he did for the Comedy Channel, and for one of their, right before the commercial break things.
Yeah.
And he talks about that was his first movie.
Wow, that's awesome. I gotta look that up now.
Well,
So,
and
but-
what's interesting though on that note too is when we're talking about kind of horror punk. Well, punk has also gone into sci-fi punk now too, or mathcore or nerd punk, which is kind of neat that it's actually evolved into that way as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, I think the genre was also musically, in my case, more linked to my brother's interest in like Napalm Death, Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah.
Of course, Gwar. Who doesn't love Gwar? But I mean, my brother went hardcore with it, and that drew me into the darker side of the genre. I was always into the Misfits and Dead Boys and the Damned, obviously. Cramps, yeah. I love the Cramps.
I'm surprised we didn't even touch on the Germs. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, of course,
Germs.
Germs.
Germs, of course.
So the other, just like horror music, White Zombie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
White Zombie was so good.
And then, of course, Blitzkid.
Yeah.
And Goolsby's now on his own. And
Yeah. You can even... I don't know if you... you can't really argue it as much, but I would say Necrocoblicon really gets...
always wanted to see them, and every time they've come, I've been busy.
I've seen I've seen their live shows on the internet, and I'm just like, these guys are spectacular. And just like...
Aren't they coming again soon?
Yeah, maybe.
think
But a
they
funny
are.
tie-in, Captain Sensible had a Blitzkid sticker for a long time. On
Oh,
his...
that's right, he did.
Yep.
I remember
So-
seeing that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we saw that when we saw him live at the summit.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, it's a Blitzkid sticker.
Blitzkid sticker. Yeah.
So, Lala, I want to get your input, too, on horror punk. But I found that Christopher Titus photo that you were talking about in Killer Clowns. He was in the car making out with the chick
Yeah.
with the glasses. That's so funny. I never realized that he was, like, the nerdy guy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So I just...
Those guys are hilarious.
Yeah. That's great. So, anyways, Lala, you're the one with the Misfits shirt, too. You're the one with the memorabilia, the collector's edition.
She's like, I don't even know who the Misfits are. I just found this.
It's just a cool shirt. It's just rad.
Some homeless guy gave this to me.
Well, for me in middle school, I was fairly like gothish. I did the New Order. I was, pretty new wave, The Cure, all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
But then, my freshman year of high school, and mind you, like I'm probably the oldest person in this room, so dating myself here.
I'm 65.
That's true. You are much older than me. My first boyfriend.
Eat more
It was
quinoa.
all he listened to was the Misfits. And so he would play it for me, and it was just awesome to make that jump from that sort of goth look, sound, everything into the Misfits, which is really what opened the door for me to punk in general. Yeah. But it's such a great band because it really kind of straddles so many different areas.
Right.
I mean, yes, they're horror punk, but you could also argue that they're psychobilly in certain songs. And you can, and so I think they kind of make a lot of things fairly accessible. But on the horror side, I think they made they were campy, and they loved campy movies and all, so I think that's where
Some dogs trying to
really
go at it
kinda-
over there.
Yeah.
sorry, totally
Rolling out the
distracted.
lips.
there,
It's
but-
okay. I'm giving you my full attention.
Sorry,
I know it's
I
okay.
went
We have.
super distracted by the dogs. I wasn't sure where
They're
I'm
too
going.
adorable
I
for.
love
It doesn't help that I already have ADDOG.
Right. Yeah, I went towards the dog. Sorry, I don't
No.
even remember the point I was making. But that was my introduction. But then I always kind of liked the way they harmonized. In some things, the whoa, like everybody does, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of why I like to stick to sometimes that genre too. Like I said with, like Blitzkid, they kind of do that as well. But then Balzac does it,
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. They're such a great band, and
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it.
Well, and the Misfits London Dungeon was actually written when they were in jail.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was maybe 17, and I got grounded. And I was grounded to my room for like a week for doing something. I don't know, something stupid. Probably coming home too late. And I put on London Dungeon on repeat for hours until my dad came in. He's like, turn that crap off. And I was like, I don't want to be in your London Dungeon, Dad.
You understand me.
I'm in your British
It makes me think of the character from Return to the Living Dead. In all the leather, he's like, this isn't just a choice, this is my life. And he's just like pointing to the chain on his nose, it's pierced to his ear.
I think we all have that one song or album that we annoyed the crap out of our parents with. In my case, it was "They're Coming to Take Me Away," haha.
Yeah. Oh man, well,
For 3 or 4 straight hours, stomping around my room
until they got the point. Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah, mine was Anarchy in the UK against my mom. She hated it so much. And I'm just sitting there like, I am an anti-Christ. Like, no, you're not.
I think my parents like hated my sister because she gave me my first like Slayer and Anthrax album and like my first Anti-Flag album. So obviously when I got, and what was funny is that I had one of the stereos that had the like 6 CD, like, and you could just change them out. So I was like, well, I'm done with Slayer. Now time to blast some Casualties. And my dad would just be like, he'll apologize to me one day.
He'll understand one day.
Definitely a shout out to all the older siblings though that made everybody cool. Like I'm an only, but all my friends who had siblings, would pass them like a Stooges record, which opened up doors for so many of us. So good job, older siblings, handing off all that stuff.
Yeah, that goes both ways. I got a lot of great music from my little brother too.
I got it from my uncle, actually. I used to watch The Young Ones, the TV show, with him when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And on that show, they had bands that were actually getting their kind of first live performances, at least out on TV. Like Motorhead was on there, The Damned, Madness. They did a video on that. But that really got me into a lot of the stuff I like now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
See, my dad's the one who introduced me to punk rock and everything. My brother's the one who introduced me like DMX.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my sister was the one, obviously, because she gave me my first metal albums. But she's the one that got me into punk rock because she gave me that Green Day album, and then she knew I was getting into like Sum 41 and Blink-182 when I was younger, and she's like, I could tell you're like getting into this genre. Here's my iPod, or these burned CDs I have. Tell me what songs you like. Tell me what you like off it, and then I'll hook you up. And then I found like Dropkick Murphys and like Face to Face, and I really loved Face to Face, and I still do.
Did you go see their acoustic set?
No, I was so bummed out. I listened to the album though. The album they came out with, like, oh my god, like they're so underappreciated.
The first Warped Tour, they had the longest set out of everybody.
I wanted to go so
That's
bad.
cool.
I wanted to go so bad.
I was upset I had to miss Real Big Fish up in Fort Collins. I've seen them every year since I moved up there, and this year was the first time I had to miss them. I'm like, God damn it.
I don't know. I heard PCP say Aaron's on heroin, so no, not anymore. It's their song. It's a more of a funny towards Aaron. So he's apparently clean now, which is good.
Good,
so.
Good. That's good. Well, we are now about an hour and 8 minutes in here. So, and this has been great. This has been fantastic. Time has flown by. Like, seriously. So we're going to have to close out the show, though, because we wanted to get you guys out. We all got to go use the bathroom, I'm assuming. So, with that being said, thank you again, Phil, Andy, and Lala, for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to support Colorado Punk Rock Army and throw some donations their way, or just even be followers to them, please look up Colorado Punk Rock Army on Facebook. They now have a Twitter.
And an Instagram.
What's your Twitter handle?
At Co-Punk Rock Army.
Yeah, Co-Punk
Rock Army.
And then your Instagram?
At Colorado Punk Rock Army.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
And listeners, girls and gals, you can check out all the links for that in the episode notes below. Again, these people are heroes in our eyes. These people are doing such good work and throwing bands out there. I mean, and just from a personal story for myself, this past week I had a real bad depression episode, and I was just struggling with it. And so one thing I do is I listen to very aggressive underground punk rock, and I made a post about it on my Facebook, and Phil actually reached out and he's like, you should check out these bands called United Defiance, and what was the other one you said?
I love United Defiance.
United Defiance was one of them. But I was saying, I'm going to listen to Total Chaos, and Phil's like, check out United Defiance and this other band, and I just streamed them, and I loved them. Like, they're badass. And that's what I want to get across, is that Phil, Andy, and Lala are here to get these bands out there, to connect them to people who love punk rock and who love this music. And if you're interested in this music or have been into this music for a long time, please support Colorado Punk Rock Army. Check them out. They're doing great things, making great movements, and they're just great. We can't say anymore. For us, if you want to follow us and keep with us, you know the spiel by now. Like us on Facebook at Punk Horror Podcast, on our Twitter, which is now finally at official PRHP. We've finally been able to make the change.
Nice.
On Twitter. Instagram at
Punk Rock Horror Podcast, hashtag PRHP Podcast.
You can check out all of our content for free on our website, punkrockhorrorpodcast.com. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Player FM, I think Last FM, YouTube. Our website has all of our current episodes, and if you want to support the show, please consider going over to our Patreon and become a Patreon supporter. With that being said, thank you again. Do you guys have anything else you want to add in?
One last thing. We hope to see everybody for Happy Skanksgiving on 11/24 at Tennyson's Tap. We have five bands.
Yep.
5 bands.
We've got a mix of ska, rockabilly, punk rock, and skate
Skate
punk.
punk, yeah.
It's gonna be a great time. $10 at the door. 5 goes to the Tennyson Center for Children, which is a great local organization that helps kids get a leg up, and the other 5 will go directly to the bands themselves.
And again, that's also what we really want you guys to check out is Happy Skanksgiving. I mean, first of all, it rolls off the tongue. And don't you want to be able to go meet up with your family around Christmas time? Be like, I went to Skanksgiving, and really get them confused.
On top of that, it's Small Business Saturday, and you will be at a small business supporting several small businesses. I mean, what could be more perfect? You could get all of your Christmas shopping done on one night. Just get a whole shit ton of music and shirts and patches and all kinds of cool shit. Just say, here, Grandma, you've got some PCP.
Check out Skanksgiving. If you're here in Denver already or going to be here in Denver, check it out. It's November 27th. 24th. I'm so sorry. I think I mixed up the time back, so that's my mistake. November 24th. Thank you for yelling at me, Lala. I appreciate that. No, I appreciate it.
That's why we keep her on board.
We encourage listeners to yell at us more often. So
He does.
Hey! Exactly.
Matt does.
I do this.
I'll yell back.
So check out Happy Thanksgiving at Tennyson's Tap, November 24th. Thank you again, ghouls and gals, for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Podcast over.
Podcast over.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.